Hi guys, welcome to this SharePoint tutorial. Today I'll be taking you through the basics of SharePoint. SharePoint is this tool that helps you to track tasks, to organize your team's work, and manage data all in one space. So we are going to be diving into creating SharePoint sites, SharePoint lists, and also the data types involved in a SharePoint list. And I'm doing the tutorial because your SharePoint site is going to be acting as a data source where you store your data from PowerApps. Okay, so I need you to be familiar with the ecosystem and all of that. So let's get started. So before we delve deeper, you need to know the difference between SharePoint site, SharePoint list, so you don't get confused and all that. So a SharePoint site is like your team's virtual workspace. Okay, you can store files, you can track data, you can create pages, and much more. Then what is a SharePoint list? So think of a SharePoint list like a super smart spreadsheet. Okay, so you can use that to track information, customize fields, and also collaborate on data easily. So just think like an Excel spreadsheet, but a kind of superset of Excel. A SharePoint list can be used for tracking, managing contacts, logging issues, or anything else that you can think of. So a clear difference between a SharePoint list and a SharePoint site is that a SharePoint site is like a container, okay, or your workspace, and while a SharePoint list is one of the tools you use inside the container. So just think of having a box, that is your SharePoint site. Then your list is only like one of the tools that you can use inside of those containers or those boxes. You can have many lists, many SharePoint lists in one SharePoint site. So first, I would like to show you how you can create your own SharePoint site. So to get started, I would like you to navigate to your M365 account on the web with this URL, and that will bring you into this home page here. You can go ahead to click on apps, then you'll see all the apps that this particular Microsoft account is connected to. As you can see, I have access to SharePoint, that's why I can see it here. Just in case you can't find SharePoint, you might have to contact your admin to grant you access. So I'll click on SharePoint here, and it brings me onto the splash screen where you can see all of the sites that I have created so far. That you can see each of these cards stands for a particular SharePoint site. Okay, so for now, I would like to create a new SharePoint site. Then I'll go ahead to create SharePoint lists in that SharePoint site. And so just so you have a full overview of how things works. So for me to be able to create a SharePoint site, I need to confirm if I have the necessary rights. So I have to ensure that I have a SharePoint administrator right to create a SharePoint site. Once I confirm that, I would go over to this URL here that says active sites in SharePoint admin. So when I click on that, it brings me over to this pane here. For this same particular Microsoft account, I can see all of the sites which you saw in the previous slash screen, all of the sites that I've created so far. Okay, I can click on any of these, then navigate to that particular SharePoint site. So I can click on this one, for example, demo sites. I'll click on the site address here, and that navigates me over to that SharePoint site. And you can see on this SharePoint site, I have some information here. I can come over here to click on site contents, scroll down to the bottom here. When I click on site content, I can see all the SharePoint lists that have been created on this SharePoint site. And just so you know, you can see that this, and you can see an icon to the left here, which is indicating, it's looking like a spreadsheet indicating that it's a SharePoint list. I can open any of this list. For example, I'll open task list. So this is an example of a SharePoint list. You can see the name of the list here, the information I'm currently tracking, all of the records in this particular SharePoint list. So I'll close that. I'll go over here because I need to create a new SharePoint site so that you can see. So what I'll do, I will say create. So when creating a SharePoint site, you must know that there are two types. One is a team site and the other is a communication site. So the team site is mainly for collaboration, sharing documents and lists among a group. Then the communication site is for broadcasting information to a wider audience. So most times you want to go for a team site for the purpose of creating data sources and storing files and all that. So I'll click on team site here. And so I have different options here. So my site can look like this, or so it all depends on the kind of SharePoint site I want to create. If it's relating to communication, employee onboarding, so whatever kind of site I want to create, I can choose from a template here, or I can just click a standard design here. So I'll choose the employee onboarding design here. Yeah, so it's going to ask me if I want to use a template or not. I'll say yes. Choose use templates. Then it's asking me for a name, so I can give this a name saying employee. I'll say employee info. So this SharePoint site will store informations about the employees in an organization. I can give it this description if I want. The group owner, I can put my name, choose my name Elvis, and I'll click on next. It's going to ask me if I want to make it private or public. If I leave it as private, I need to grant you permission for you to be able to access this site. If I make it public, once you're able to get the URL, I don't need to grant you rights. You can just get into the site. I'll make it private because I don't just want anyone to have access to the site, so I'll make it private, and the only members that would have access to the site are the ones that I have granted rights and all that. Then I'll leave it as English, that's my best language. And time zone, I'll leave this for now as that, and I'll say create site. Then it's telling me to add members. This is optional, you can do that later. So I'll leave that blank, and I'll just go ahead and wait for this to load up. All right, so it's done applying the template and all that. So I'll just hit the finish button, and now you can see that that site has been created. You can see this has been added here. I'll click on it, and I'll just head over. I'll leave all of, you can see it was just created, and that was done by me. I'll just go over to the site address here, click on that, then it navigates me over to that SharePoint site. Right, so we have successfully created a SharePoint site, and you can see this design we selected comes along with some features. You can see to track events, to see some tabs, onboarding team, and all of the things that are pertaining to employees. This SharePoint site has it. And also, if we need to upload documents, we can come over to the documents tab here. We can click on upload. We can pick up a file from our desktop and upload it to this SharePoint site. I'll select the document to preview it, so we can upload any type of document as we want. So right now we're focusing on creating a SharePoint list, right? That Excel-like experience where we can track tasks, and all of those stuff. So to create a new SharePoint list, I will click on the new button here. I'll click on lists. So it opens up this pane. We have the options to choose the type of list that I want to create. I can create from scratch. I can create from existing Excel data, or even from an existing list, or I can create from some of the templates that Microsoft has provided for us already. So for now, I'll be going with a blank list, and I will need to give my list a name. I'll name it employees. I'll click on create. So the SharePoint list has been created, and we also have the name to the left here for quick navigation. So what we need to do next is to add different columns so we can store different data concerning that employee. I'll need to track the hire date, the gender of the employee, the picture, the full name, and so on. But right now we are only able to see one particular column. I'll click on the add column here. Okay, so what this is showing me is different data types. Okay, so for the new column that I want to create, or the new field, so most times you can hear me use the name interchangeably. So a field is also a column. So these data types are set for a particular column, so we can control the data that is going to be stored on that column. So let's say, for example, we are creating a column to store the hire date of a particular employee, or to store the hire date of employees, and all the entries that will be on that column would be in date format. So that's the essence of this. So before we go on, let me run you through the most data types that we have in SharePoint. So for text, also called single line of text, we just use it for short entries like name, not much text. We also have the choice, like probably we need to select from an option if this employee is a male, a female, or Then also we also have the option for a date and time to store data time, obviously. Then we have the multiple lines of text, so now we can use this to store something like address, full-blown descriptions, and all of that jazz. Then the person column is kind of a special column. We use that to store the names of people that are in the organization. Okay, we don't need to type that, it's already synced to our Entra ID and maps everyone in the particular organization. We also have a number column to store numeric values. We have a yes and no column, like just two options, yes or no, boolean, true or false. We also have the hyperlink, we can click this to go to a web page and all that. We have the currency column to store financial values, like probably in dollar, naira, and all of that, if we need to store prices of things. We have location to store the location of a building, or things like that. We also have the image column to store images. Okay, so just for example, we want to store the picture of an employee. I know that we have this, which I don't really use that much. And we also have the lookup, which is very special type of column. You can use this to get information from other lists based on your selection. Okay, so and we'll delve more on this in subsequent tutorials. And we also have the average rating column type. First, we would like to store the name of the employee, so I'll click on text and I'll click on next. Then I'll have to give my column a name, so I would say full name, right? Then I can leave the description blank for now. You can see this is the text, single line of text. I can select here to change my options, but I'll leave that as save as text. I'll leave other things blank, then I'll just click on save. Alright, so that has been created. I'll go ahead to create other columns that I need. I'll click on add column again. I would like to store the gender of the employee, so I'll click on choice, I'll click on next, and I'll give my column a name, say gender. And on the choices here, I would I'll make this male, I'll make this female, and this I would say others. And also you can see here to the left, I can rearrange this, put the female to the top, and I can sort this as I want, just so you know that is there. I can add more choices by clicking on this, but I don't need other choices now. So once that is done, I'll click on save, and that column will get added. And also I also like to store the image of the employees, so I'll scroll down to my image column type here, select that, then click on next, and I'll say, I can just say picture. This is the image type. I don't need to change anything else. I'll click on save. So there's something I would like to show you. We had only created 3 extra columns, right? Then but in SharePoint, what you need to know is that when you create a SharePoint list, Microsoft underneath the scenes creates other supporting columns alongside your SharePoint list. So if you want to see that, you can select on any of these column header names. You can click on column settings, then click on show/hide columns, and you will see all of the other columns that are here. Okay, one good one here is the ID. It gives it a unique numbering of each record that is added. Then we also have our modified, like when the record was modified or created, and who did all of those things. So I'll check those boxes. I'll click on apply, and now you can see that the other lists, the other columns are now showing up. Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead to start inserting information in our SharePoint list. So right here we can create CRUD operations. Yes, SharePoint is really nice. We can create CRUD operations in our SharePoint. We can click on add new item to the top here. Then title, I don't really need the title, but for now I'll just put in the Mr. And full name, I'll put in my name, Elvis Yober. Gender, I'll select male, obviously I'm male. I'll add a picture. I'll click on this, then it will take me to my desktop to select an image. I'll just put on a random image. And in SharePoint, you can see this attachment column we didn't create it, but with this we can add attachment like a CSV file, PDF, and all that. But it's quite different from the picture column, because the picture can only store JPEG or PNG, just images. But for the attachment, you can store images and other file types, okay, even a zip file. So once that is done, I'll click on save, and now you can see that information has been added. And you can see I did not update the ID column. That is like an auto numbering for each record and all that. So most times you can hear me say some terminologies like records. So when we add a new item, like a new row of data, in Excel it's called like a row of data, you know, but right here in database terminologies and all that, it's called a record. Yeah, okay. So columns are, you know, the vertical ones, and you can also call them fields, and then the horizontal ones are called, you know, records and all that. Then the entire thing in Excel we call them tables, but over here we call them, you know, lists and all that. So like for example, this is the employee list. For it to be in Excel, it will be called like, you know, a table. And so that has been created. So we can keep on adding new information as that. So now you can see that the other supporting columns has been updated, like when was this created, and you can see who modified that and all that. So I can click on add new item to add another employee. Then for now I won't attach anything. I'll just click on save, and you can see that information will also be added to the database there. And you can see the ID column was updated automatically and all that. So there are various things you can do here on your SharePoint list as well. You can sort by the full name. If you would like to do some extra editing on the columns, you can click on it, left click on it, then click on A to Z, and that will be sorted for you. And if I need to make any changes to a column, I can click on the header here, click on column settings, click on edit, then I can, you know, change the name, change the data type and all that. So another good feature or cool thing I want to show you about SharePoint list is this button here, the edit in grid view. So once I click on this, it gives me the Excel-like experience where I can directly change information, not having to be like in a form pop-up and all that. You can see it's just like I'm in Excel making changes, and that gets saved automatically. I don't need to hit Ctrl S and so on and so forth. You know, I can change, update some items here. I can update items here, but I can't make any changes to the standard columns or the ones, the independent columns or whatever they want to call it. These are read-only cells. The ID column also is a read-only cell because that was created by Microsoft alongside. So, but the custom columns that you create are editable by you, and you know, all that. So lastly, before we wrap up, I want to show you how you can connect your SharePoint list to your PowerApps. So I'll go over here to my PowerApps here. I'll click on the data tab. I'll click on add data. I'll go to connectors, expand that tab, select SharePoint, select it again. Then to the right, it starts loading up all my entire SharePoint site. And now you can see that employee info, the one SharePoint site I just created, is right there. So sometimes the SharePoint site you have just created may not show up. So if that is the case, you will have to paste the URL of the SharePoint site here. So how do you get the URL? You go over to your SharePoint site, you come to the URL, and this is my tenant name, then this is the site name, this is lists, which I'm currently in, and this is the list name. So I'm going to copy down from the site name to the tenants. I'll go over here, then I'll paste it here, then I'll click on connect. So once I click that, you can see now it navigates me to the list that I have in that particular SharePoint site. And now you can see my employees list here. Then I'll click on connect. Now you can see that has been connected. I also got a notification here. And I can go back to my tree view, and I'm going to insert a gallery on this screen. I'm going to just say gallery, vertical gallery. Yeah, I'm going to move that over here, and I'll come over here to data source. Then I'll be able to select my employees list, and I can display the data on my SharePoint list over here on my PowerApps. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now you know how to create your SharePoint site, SharePoint list, and you also know about data types in SharePoint lists. So now you can go ahead to use SharePoint as your data source for your PowerApps program and all that. So until then, keep on building smarter apps. Bye for now.